thought I'd come back to the project that I have in hand right now. I'm full of dust. And some of you can handle the dust and some can't. I suggest wearing a mask, but it's rather hard to wear a mask and talk, so I'm gonna not wear a mask. First thing that I did is I had the block roughed out on the outside, cut to shape, and I weighed it, and it was 3.5 ounces. Well, we're going to get this down to 1/2 ounce, or as close to 1/2 ounce as possible. So what I did was I get the Dremel tool out, and I start dremeling the inside of this. And you want to make this wall thickness around 1/8 of an inch thick all the way around, and you can do that with the light, but we're not close enough to that yet. So what I do is I mark out where I want it to be, and I get it close, and I start sanding with the sanding paper on a roll or something along those lines. But since I cut the tape, I spent about 15 minutes hollowing this block, and I've got 1.5 ounces out of it already. So I'm going to cut the camera because the dust is just unbelievable, but I wanted to give you an update on how I hollow blocks. Like I said, it's rather dusty. The dust is just pouring off me. But if you want to do it fast, you got to use power tools. You could gouge it out. I do have some gouges, and I'll probably use some. I use a variety of things to get this wall thickness down to 1/8 of an inch, and it's got a long ways to go. So we're going to be carving on this for probably the next hour. I would say at least an hour to get this hollowed out enough to be acceptable to use as the top block, and then I'll turn around and do the bottom block, and when I get that done, I'll go ahead and make the cowl. And that sounds like a ton of work, but we should be able to get that done today. And then tomorrow we can start the finishing process on the wing. So I probably won't come back until I got some substantial things done, but I wanted to show you how I hollow. And that's, like I say, I use a Dremel tool, and I really gouge it out quickly, and it really throws the dust. So be careful, wear a mask, enjoy, have fun. Today is day 17, and we're going to start finishing. And you're probably going to wonder, what the heck is he doing? Well, they used to make dope or brushes with no paint on the handle. And they had good camel hair in them. And now all you can get is a synthetic type brush, unless you want to spend big money on these things. But they're not gumbuckers anymore. They're some other type of off-brand that I buy. They're $4 for a 1-inch wide synthetic hair brush. The only problem with it is they paint the handle and they paint the shank. So before you start doping, I sand off the paint, because sure as heck that lacquer thinner will attack the paint and you'll have it in the clear dope. So I sand the paint off the handle and take some thinner and remove the black paint on the shank as well before I start. And it only takes a couple of seconds in the drill. And it's not mandatory, but I would suggest you do it. Especially if you're going to do a brush paint job, because that paint will end up in the clear. That's close enough. Well, when I cut the camera, I'll wipe off what's left of it on the shank. I'll probably just cut the end of it off there. Now I'm going to show you one thing that I do to my brushes is I take it on the drill press and I drill a hole in it. First we're going to take a quart can and see how deep we want to drill that hole. So it's just about a 1/4 inch above the shank on this one, and I'll show you why in a second, but it'll only take a minute to drill this hole. Sand off the edges. So we've drilled a hole through the handle of the brush. And you ask, what the heck is that for? Well, I don't know how many of you have ever set your paintbrush down into the can, but if you leave it set in the can for any length of time, the brushes end up bent over, or the bristles end up bent over like that. So what I do is I drill that hole in there, and when I'm going to set the brush back in the can, I just simply slide the handle through it and set it into the can. A ball driver. And set it into the can. That way the bristles never touch the bottom, so you don't have bent bristles. Now, I've been buying all my dope from Wix. I buy the clear by the gallon. It's cheaper that way. Shake it up real well. I shook it before. And I had some thinner in a can already. This is a can of a thinner that I had left from before. And we're going to mix it 50-50. And we're going to put 3 coats on the wing. And then I'm going to cover it with the 2/10 veil. Which is right here. And then it'll get 3 more coats diluted 50-50. And then we'll apply the soak span. As I stated on doing these wings, don't sand the sheeting, or else you'll end up with a big washboard. Not until you get the covering on it do you want to sand any sheeting in. You always want to use a block. You never want to use your hand. You'll dig valleys into the thing. I have soft blocks. These are available from body shops for wet sanding. These are soft blocks. You put 500 grit paper on it and sand with. Works real good. I've went over and I've double and triple checked all the cap strip edges, make sure that they mate real nice. I did end up with a couple of dings in it. I'll have to fill them after I get the covering on, one there and one there, but normal shop wear and tear, you just kind of have to fix the dings as you go. I have an extra foam cradle that I put some wax paper on. We're going to go ahead and dope the wing with the wax cradle. And the reason I'm starting the finishing now is time management. And what I mean by that is there are a few more things to do on the fuselage, like do the mounting for the cowl. And I do still have to install the horn on the elevator stabilizer. It's not installed yet. But these are things I can do while the wing is drying. If I went ahead and did this stuff, well, you know, the wing could have been drying. So we got to kind of look at what do we need, you know, the longest thing to be drying needs to be done first. And then we can go back and do some of the other stuff. This is coming out relatively light. It's 23 ounces now. All the parts together, 23 ounces. I got 20 ounces of hardware, motor, spinner, prop, pilot, push rod, wheels, things like that. So we're looking at, you know, around 40 ounces, 45 ounces, and then the finish should be anywhere between 10 and 14 ounces. So we're going to be well under the 64 ounce limit mark on the lines, depending on how much paint it takes to make it look good. But I wanted to get started on this covering today. So I'm going to cut the camera. You know what? I'll go ahead and I'll put a coat of dope on. I'll show you how I do that. That way there's not a big mystery on how that's done. don't have a viscosity meter that reads centipoids or anything, so I use the TLAR method on the dope. And we got about 50% thinner in that. And we'll open the gallon can up. Aircraft spruce, I don't know if they sell certified or Randolph dope. But I can tell you this, Brodak dope is Randolph dope. They have more colors in Brodak, but you can hardly beat getting a gallon of clear at a time. So we'll go ahead and pour that in there. Now that's all the clear. It's a quart of clear. It's about 60-40. A little less than a quart. And that's my entire allowance for substrate. Could be slightly more, but probably not. Now, what did I do with the brush? So busy talking, I've lost my tool. Put the lid back on the dope, and we're going to shake that up. Can't believe it. I wish somebody was here, they could tell me where I set it. I found it now. Okay. So we got the dope mixed up 60-40. Wax paper on the cradle and just start brushing the first few coats on. Now remember, when you're doping this, equal amount of coats on both sides. If you don't, the wing will warp. And you try to do it as quick as you can, getting the dope on both sides, because it will pull. And I've seen a lot of airplanes flying that are warped. I really don't have a way to videotape how to steam, but I learned from one of my friends how to steam. Ron O'Toole from the Tucker days, and steaming is a good thing to know. Now, we got those hinges on there, and I'm not worried about painting them because they won't stick. It will not stick. The hinge pin is down inside the flap. I have yet to have one stick yet, so that's a good thing. So we got the dope on one side. Make sure you hit the cap strips. Now this gets no sanding yet. We won't sand until probably the second coat of dope. Because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to seal the wood. Everything was sanded with 600 sandpaper, so the grain is real tight. The way it looks, I don't think it's even going to take 3 coats to fill the grain. But I want to get this first sealer coat on, and then we'll look and see where we are there, and then apply the veil. I think. See, I had quit using the carbon veil because I've been building the beam wings, and I don't use veil on beam wings or those light airplanes. I'm thinking that the veil probably adds an ounce or so extra in the finish. And anybody that's ever used that knows that it does not, it is, it's wavy. I mean, I could get by without using the veil, but like I said, this is a tribute airplane to Tom, and I want a really nice finished airplane this time. We're not worried about, is it going to be competitive, because by the looks of it, I'm out of the competitive realm anyway. There's no way. We don't have good weather here, and the field's 25 miles away, so I might as well just build them and enjoy them. That coat's already dry on that side, so in a few minutes here we'll flip it over. Oh, I wanted to show you about the just take this here and set it in there, and that's it. Now the bristles won't bend over. It's almost good enough to turn over. Slightly tacky, because I do want to turn it over. Got some bumps there too. See, that's not good. That came from the cradle. piece of 180. My block here. Oh, I see another little ding that's going to need to be fixed. I see a gap I want to fill. I do not want, I got some shavings on the ground, let's see. I do not want that gap there. So I picked a sliver off the ground. Yeah, here we go. And for those who don't know what I'm doing is that there was a gap in the sheeting, and I just took a sliver of wood off the ground and filled that gap. Wood is lighter than putty. Well, I know there's some good builders out there, and I don't know whether you guys are getting any use out of these videos. But I'm really not targeting the guys who already know how to do it. I'm targeting the ones that, like the guy said, he doesn't have anybody to show him how to sand or how to cut wood or whatever. That looks good. Okay, so let's put a coat of dope on the other side. And after I get the first coat on, I'm going to cut the camera, and I'll put the subsequent 2 coats on, because we don't want to drag this on all day showing you how to apply dope. It's a pretty straightforward operation. But as I said, you know, people ask, how can I do it so fast? Well, time management. I do spend the time on it. My sessions are about 10 hours long. So if I got 17 days in it, I got 170 hours. There are no free lunches. But I have been building 50 years, so I can remember the first airplane that I built. And I'll tell you the story on how that came about. My dad flew speed planes back in the 40s. He had a Ball 60. And I think he even got a second place in the Canadian Nationals. And that's because the guy who designed the motor came back after he crashed and topped his speed on the last day. Anyway, my dad said, you know, I got something that you might be interested in doing. I said, well, what is it? And anything that I could do with my dad would have been, you know, I really like doing it. He's a great guy. For some of you who know him, he's still alive. Once in a while he comes to the Nats with me. He got me a stick and tissue kit. All the parts were printed on balsa wood. Nothing was cut out. Nothing was prefabbed. We had to take Gillette double-edged razor blades and a matchbook and tear the back half or the spine off the matchbook and then bury the razor blade, half of it, into that matchbook. And I sat at his green Sears workbench in the garage in Los Angeles, cutting out balsa wood that you'd swear was pine. It was so hard. It was just so frustrating. You'd cut it and it would split. And by the way, I never finished that airplane, that particular one. However, later on in life, when I was in Oklahoma, I did build one, just as a nostalgic type thing, to see if I could do it, because it took, that was 20 years ago, it took 30 years experience to figure out how to do it. It certainly was not for an 8-year-old kid, that's for sure. But I did give it a try, and that's basically how my model airplane enthusiasm got started. My dad later ended up buying a hobby shop, and that was in West Covina. And Tom Warden, the guy that I'm building this airplane in tribute to, was our testers rep. Vic Cunningham of Free Flight fame was our Pettit rep, Pettit Hobby Poxy. So I learned a lot of these things that I do from guys that were really good. I mean, anybody ever seen any of Tom Warden's airplanes, you'd know this guy was a builder and a finisher. And it's kind of sorry he's gone. Back in the 90s, I used to call him once a week. We discussed theory, and I was here in St. Louis in the 90s. He was still back in the LA area. Oh, I got one rib up there that's a little high, so we'll have to let that dry. Anyway, first coat's on, one on each top and bottom. We're going to do the flaps separately. We're not worried about that. Let this dry, flip it over, put another coat on it. I'll come back, we'll put the veil on it. And for those who haven't seen the veil, I know many of you have, but some of you haven't. It's a 2/10 carbon tissue that's available from Aerospace Composites. And we're just going to lay it all on at one section and then cut out the centers. That way it'll be uniform. And then I'll come back and dope it and sand it. And we're probably going to go ahead and cover this wing. I might get it covered today. Everybody, thinks, well, it takes months or weeks. Yeah, the only thing that takes months or weeks is the sanding. There is a ton of sanding to do on these. If you ain't into sanding, you ain't into building, that's for sure. So I'll cut the camera. I'll be back after I get 3 coats of dope on it. Until then, we'll see you. Keep building. Okay, we got 3 coats of dope on the wing. I lightly sanded the airframe, the whole wing, with 500 grit sandpaper. And now I've cut the veil, and we're going to apply veil on the top and bottom. And I got to thinking about why I'm going to use this veil. It's a good filler, a good leveler. It's, I don't know how much strength it adds. I think that the paper probably adds more strength in this veil. But it's a good leveler. So now we're going to get this veil on, and we're going to apply 3 more coats of this dope that's thinned 60-40. Overlapping the center, so we're going to have a double joint in the center of the wing. And get it down real good. In my opinion, there's no need to wait a week between coats. You know, I don't know. There's a million ways to do things, and it really doesn't matter how you like to do it, just as long as it gets done. So now I'm going to cut this off. I have it tacked on in the center. We're only going to veil the wing. I'm not going to do the fuselage. I'm going to use tissue on the fuselage, and that's it. And like I say, the reason I'm doing the wing is it's a good leveler. So I'll put some tack over here. Today is the 4th of July, and they're blowing stuff up outside, it sounds like. I started this airplane about a week, well, not a week, about 4 days after I came back from Rodak. There was a friend of Bob Reeves, I can't remember his name, and I do apologize, who gave me some motors, which I'm dumbfounded that he gave them to me, because they're expensive motors. And I told him that I would build some airplanes for those motors, and this is one of them. So, we dope all the tissue down. When this dries, we'll come back and lightly sand this. Make sure that you take out your landing gear block doors too, because if you put the veil on with dope over the top of the landing gear doors, you've just glued your landing gear doors on. No question about that at all. Dope is glue. It's not paint. Everybody thinks it's paint. It is not paint. It's a form of adhesive. It says so right on the can. It is a lacquer-based adhesive. Like I said, I use the Randolph dope from Wix. It is a real aircraft dope. Wix offers this dope, and it's relatively inexpensive when you're buying it as a aircraft product instead of a hobby product, so that's why I do that. This tissue does not stretch very well. But like I said, it's a filler and a leveler. I'm not sure about the strength. A lot of people swear by it, but I don't see it. I did some tests, and I didn't see that it was much stronger. I did see that it was heavier than tissue because it takes more dope to fill. But like I said, a million ways to skin a cat. Do it any way you like. This is how I'm doing this model. Okay, welcome back. It's been about 4 hours. That's what it's taken me to do this. To get all the carbon on the thing, get it all coated with dope. I've got 1 coat of dope on the carbon, 3 coats of dope underneath it. Probably going to let this sit till this evening, and before I go to bed tonight, I'll put another coat of clear dope on the carbon. Tomorrow when I come back, I'll go ahead and lightly sand it with 500, and then we'll apply the paper. But until then, I have some other things to work on the fuselage, mounting the cowl. A couple of things on the wing. I was in such a hurry to get the covering on it. I noticed, hey, I forgot the wingtip weight box. It's not a big deal. We'll go ahead and make one up. I'll cut a square out and sink it in to the wingtip. I will be plotting the wingtip weight box, and how I do that is I have a long straight edge, 72-inch straight edge, and I have this airplane on the wall, the Continental XL, so we know about where it balances. And what you want to do is you go through the center of the lead outs, through the balance point, to the wingtip. That's where your wingtip weight box goes. So we're looking right just in front of the spar on the tip, which is not a big deal, and I'll make the box big enough that I can move the concentrated weight around inside the box. The wing came out really nice. I'm real happy with it. It's the veil has stiffened it up and filled any of the little imperfections. Pretty straight. It's got a slight whoop that it took on the tip, and before I install it, I'll go ahead and steam it straight right here in the tip. I don't know, I guess the dope relaxed it and it took a little twist, but that's not a big deal. We'll get that fixed before I put it in the airplane. So that's basically where I'm at. This is Day 17, 4th of July. This airplane was started right after Brodax, so it's not very old. And we have all the pieces done, and we're working on the finish already. So I'll probably post this video up, and I'll keep you apprised of what's going on the finish tomorrow when I come back. So we'll see you tomorrow. Tight lines.